it's Iyanu again. We're back again, and I have another incredible guest with me. Welcome to You Have a Story with ToTsFrishion, where we tell incredible cancer stories, where we use our platform as an encouragement to people who are going through cancer diagnosis right now, or who've had a loved one who have transitioned into glory, which means died as a result of cancer. So, welcome again. Like always, grab a drink while you listen because this is going to be an exciting episode again, as always. And today I have an incredible guest in the name of Lindsey Walker. She's a publicist, yes, and she's been in business for 11 years. So, I'll call her a guru in the business, okay? But I don't want to waste any time. I'm just gonna give her the floor. She's gonna introduce herself before we dive into a story and why we're here. Okay, so Lindsey, the floor is open to you.
Well, thank you, first of all, Iyanu, for having me. Love what you're doing. Love the platform. My name, again, is Lindsey, and I am a publicist. I work with brands to help them get into the media. I'm also a stage 4 cancer survivor and the author of a book called Thriving Through the Storm, which shares my journey and my story of surviving, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much for that brief introduction of yourself. Like I said, she's a guru in publicist. So if you're in need of her services, please check her out. Later on, we're going to tell you where to check her out. She's on Instagram, all of social media, Facebook. You can, and she'll also be letting us know what our contact email. So tell us about your cancer story.
Yeah. So back in 2018, it was like May. I remember going to a party and I was extremely hot. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's hot. But again, it was May, right? So
Mhm.
the weather starts heating up, so I didn't think much of it. Fast forward to about a month later, I was on the phone with my friend and I said, hey, I can't breathe. I said, I don't know what's going on. I was like, I literally can't breathe. And she was like, well, if you can't breathe, you need to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital and they took me in the back, and they were beginning to just kind of try to figure out what was going on. And they asked me if I had been in a car accident recently. And a few months prior to that, I had been. So I told them yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said something was going on, like that was stopping me from breathing.
Wow.
So they did an x-ray and they're like, hey, you have an extremely large mass in the front, sitting in the front of your chest. So that was June. I got admitted into the hospital at the end of June and I had very high fevers. My fevers were getting up to like 104, 103. And so I stayed in the hospital and, of course, doctors were asking me questions and, they told me that I need to have a biopsy done. And so I was like, okay. And at this time, it's not really clicking to me
Mm-hmm.
like what's happening. And so I had the biopsy and thinking back now, one of the doctors cause I had to keep going back and forth to the hospital because I kept running high fevers. And one of the doctors said, oh, we just think it's a low grade lymphoma. Maybe you can take some pills and that be it. And so my response was, okay, but it's still not clicking to me like what lymphoma actually is.
Hmm.
Right? And it took them weeks to give me a diagnosis. By the time they diagnosed me, it was a Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis, and it was at stage 4. And they gave me the diagnosis on July 3rd. I was living in Atlanta, and I had to get on an airplane and they flew me to St. Louis, which is where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately had to start treatment like within that same week. That's how serious it was. So the mask that was sitting in front of my chest, not only was it sitting in front of my chest, but it was wrapped around my back. And the doctor, my oncologist, told me that the treatment plan was, I want to say, yeah, 6 months of chemo. Yep, it was 6 months of chemo. And in total, I paused because I'm trying to remember how many treatments that was for me. So it was 6 months in total. Um, and then within that 6 months, I did 12 treatments, and it was about 2 treatments a month. It was a lot to go through. I thank God that I don't look like what I've been through, but it was tough. It was really tough. There were moments that just got really hard.
Mm.
I had a blood clot in my leg and I couldn't walk. And at one point, one of my neighbors at the time had to come from across the street because he saw me struggling to get up the steps. And he was like, hey, um, I can see that you're having pain. Like,
Mhm.
let me help you. And he had to like physically pick me up and carry me into my house, because I couldn't walk. And that was just one of the instances. There were days that I couldn't swallow. I didn't feel like eating, you know, uh, I lost all of my hair. It was definitely an experience that I would not wish on anyone, wish on my worst enemy if I have one. It's horrible. But also during that time, my faith was strengthened. God really kept me. He showed up for me. He showed me, that he's a healer. He showed me that he can handle anything
Mm.
that we face, and that includes a cancer diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's like you, in the space of a minute, you just explained to, like, to me and to the audience, like, what you experienced for like years. Because I believe you were diagnosed July 2018.
Mhm.
And all through that, you went through chemo for like 6 months,
Mhm.
and then you had like 12 treatments, 2 treatments each month. That's a lot. Cause I could remember when my mom was going through that treatment. Although I was young, but I remember all the things, like she had to go for like weekly appointments, and she had to like receive blood like every 3 days. The memories are still fresh. So I really can relate to what you're saying on a level that, like, as a loved one, I would say.
Yeah.
Wow. But all through this moment, well, you mentioned God being, like, you found God during this moment. Did you find him, I would say, immediately, or did you go through a process of like grieving, whereby you grieved your old life and you had to come to a place and a conclusion that without God, you don't think you're gonna survive this?
Well, let's be clear. So I have always had
Mhm.
a relationship with the Lord. Like
Okay.
from the
Yeah.
time,
Hmm.
that I was old enough to have a sense of thought. But it's different, right? When you go through something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I always tell people because they were like, they ask me similar questions. Are you angry with God? A lot of people have asked me if I was angry with God or if I was mad at God during that time. And the answer is no, but I was extremely hurt.
Hmm.
I didn't understand what was going on. I
Hmm.
did not understand why. I went through the whole why me. I did grieve a little bit, but I would say I grieve more as a survivor than I did when I was going through it because I was just so focused on getting through treatments and making sure that I was okay and just, really, really trying to keep my attitude together. And, I had a ton of people praying for me. And so my focus, it's interesting because I don't even really think that I had time to grieve in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, I had nights where I just cried, but one of the things that I told God when I was in the hospital, I remember it was late at night. I was by myself, and I stood up, and I went to the mirror, and I said, God, I said, I don't want to go through this at all, and I wish that you would take this from me. And I said, Lord, if I have to go through this, I need you to be with me like you were with Daniel in the lion's den, like you were with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Um, I need you to walk with me through the fire. And he answered my prayer the entire way. I was surrounded by so many beautiful people who helped me, whether it was the nurses or someone that worked at the front desk who would check me in.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I would go back for checkups and things like that, like there's one particular phlebotomist that will go and speak to me and make sure that I'm still okay. So the journey showed me like how beautiful God is and how he's a sustainer, and really allowed me to see myself in a different light and people in a different light, and gave me a new sense of what it meant to be a believer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. That's that's a powerful word you just said. It gives me a different sense of what it
Mhm.
means to be a believer, because I feel like we know God, we tend to know God and have a different revelation in Him sometimes when we're on the mountain and when we're on the valley. Because when we're on the mountains, things are good, everything is working perfectly. We know God as this good God. But when we're in the valley, when we're in pain, when things are not going as planned, we tend to know God differently too.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's also what builds our faith in Him. Like, judging for myself through the pain I experienced, I would say that's what resulted in me having like a compassion for people living with cancer, people who are experiencing cancer now. And that gave me the privilege to share myself with the world, and also like to also create like community, create a platform where people can come share their stories too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I told you earlier, I am just so grateful for you and your
Hmm.
platform and allowing space for people to be able to share, because you never know what someone goes through. And that's the other thing that I learned too. I can remember being in Walmarts and being in different stores. And because I would get short of breath quickly, I couldn't walk through the stores. So I had to ride like one of those scooters.
Yeah.
And people would look at me like, oh, she doesn't need it. Or like, they thought that I was trying to misuse it. And not that you have to explain anything to anyone when you're using things, but it just made me reflect on times and moments where I may have not been so gracious to
Mm.
others going through things, and maybe they don't look like what they go through. Like maybe they have some sort of chronic invisible, like you can't see the ailment. Right.
Mhm.
So it really made me more aware of how I treat people, even in my thought life,
Mm.
and to be more gracious to people, because again, we don't ever know what anyone is going through.
You should never judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
That's basically the summary, because you never, like you said, you never know what someone else might be going through. So let's tie all this that you said into your book, because I know you said at the beginning of when we first started that you had a book. So what compelled you? What inspired you to write a book about your journey?
Yeah. So my friend, one of my dear best friends, has a book publishing company, and she was just starting and she was encouraging me to, she's like, you gotta write a book, you gotta write a book. And I was like, okay. At the time, she had a 21-day book writing challenge. And I wrote the book in 21 days. It's 126 pages. And I think for me, initially, I just wanted to get it out.
Mm,
I just wanted to get everything that I had kept bottled up, all of my feelings, all of my frustrations, just everything. And I just let it all out in the book. I mean, God started giving me the words and I was just typing away, writing away. Like, and I can remember when I finished, I just cried
mm,
because it was so therapeutic for me. Writing the book was a journey itself because it allowed me to go back and I recalled things and I thank God for keeping me during that time. And I also released so much
mm,
in that book writing process. And once I was done, because the funny thing is I told my friend, I was like, I may not publish this. I'm just gonna write it for me.
mhm,
But when I was done and I thought about the story that I had to share, I couldn't keep the goodness of God to myself in that way.
mm.
So there you have it, thriving through the storm.
Yeah. Do you have it with you right now?
Do I have I don't have
Okay.
I'm looking. I know it's probably back there by my office.
Yeah, it's all right. I just wanted to see, like, just sure it's like a cover or something, but I'm sure we can find it on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah, on any bookstore. Traveling through. So it's basically your story and your journey of like going through all like the cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
Whew, it's funny how difficulties and life challenges inspire us to do great things that we didn't know we can do ourselves.
So true. So
Yeah, yeah. All right. So next question I would like to ask is what has been the most significant changes you've seen in yourself now being a cancer thriver? I'm not going to call you a survivor because you're thriving. You're more than thriving, you're glowing.
thank you.
So, what has been the most significant change?
That's a great question. I think the most significant change has been how I treat myself and how aware I am of how I treat myself.
Mm,
So, like the other day, I had to apologize to myself for being unkind. Also, I realized that I can't be all about work. I can't just work, 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 because that's what I was doing. Prior to the diagnosis, I was working like nonstop, until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Like I was just working. Even when I was in the hospital, I was working. Like I had the laptop in my hospital bed and I'm working and my mom's looking at me like, you should probably put that down. So it's understanding that I'm a human first and a business owner second.
mm.
And it's understanding that I have limitations and I need to set boundaries.
Wow. You're human first before being a business owner. I feel like we get caught up in a sense that like we get caught up in things we have to do that we don't take care of ourselves. And we should realize, including myself, I'm really glad you brought that up because I had to come to a realization that if I'm not healthy enough, I won't do the thing. I won't be able to do the things that I want to do. So in everything, my health should come first, like self care, realizing that I need to treat my body. I need to treat myself, my own being, like my mental, social, emotional, physical, financial too. I need to treat myself and take care of myself in order to be able to do the things that I desire. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
making sure that you're checking in and that we're all checking in on how we feel, how we're showing up. What do we need to shift? What do we need to change?
Yeah. And that can tie into, I would say, like community, because I'm pretty sure you had community when you were going through the
Yes,
cancer journey. You mentioned like people praying for you. And you just mentioned your mom too, like being in the hospital bed with you. I feel like that's also important. Like and such a change that I feel like you noticed yourself too, that you need community to be able to thrive.
yes, so true.
Yeah.
My family was such a great support.
Hmm.
My mom cut her hair when I cut mine. Um, and my grandmother really took great care of me during that time. And even after, my best friend would come and visit me, and she lived in Houston at the time, and she would come and visit me and sit with me. And everyone really stepped up and prayed for me and called me and checked on me. And I remember some of my friends would come and get me after I felt up for it. They would make sure that I got some fresh air when I wasn't tired. When I was tired, they would, make sure that I was good and I had what I needed or I got what I needed at the time. So yes, really, I would not have had the journey that I had without a great support system. And I tell that to people all the time, especially when you are battling a diagnosis, especially a cancer diagnosis, to make sure that you have the best people around you, people
Yeah.
that believe in you, people that are praying for you, people that are praying for, your healing, people that understand that this is a trying journey. It's a rough road and they're willing to ride it out with you.
So basically, I'm gonna give a shout out. Shout out to your mom, your mom, your best friend, and your other friends, like your whole community who took care of you during
Yeah,
the entire journey. So shout out to them. I hope they're gonna listen to this part. So I'm giving a big
yes.
shout out to them. Yeah. So as we round up, can you just share some encouraging words to someone who's um going through like a cancer diagnosis at this time? It doesn't matter what type of cancer it is. Just share some encouraging words to them, please.
Yeah. So the first thing that I will tell you is that it's not your fault. You are not to blame for your diagnosis. You are not to blame for your diagnosis.
Hmm.
You're not defined by your diagnosis. Your diagnosis is not your identity.
Hmm.
And as you are on this journey, be kind to yourself. If you are tired, rest. If you have energy, get some sunlight. If you are at a space where you want to do something different, you want to take up a new hobby, do the things that you need to do for your mind, for your body, and for your heart and your soul.
Hmm.
And make sure that you have great, solid people around you. This is not the time for you to be stressed. It's not the time for you to harbor any type of anger or frustration. This is time for you. And if you are a believer, it's time for you and God. And if you're not a believer, I still would encourage you and say it's time for you and God.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the encouragement that I have.
Those are powerful. It's time for you. I love the last part. It's time for you and God, because medicine has a role to play and God has a role to play. So it's when medicines are like dealing with the tumors and everything, we fire back with some great prayers and
Yes,
know that like God who sees everything knows while you're going through it, and at the end will bring out a purpose through it. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Thank you so much. This was such an incredible time. I can't believe it's been how many minutes now? It's like I'm having just a casual conversation with someone I've known for years.
Yes,
But thank you again for being our guest, and thank you for sharing your story.
absolutely.
Before we leave, tell us where to find you and where to find your book too.
Yes, you can find Thriving Through the Storm. It's on Amazon. Also, if you want to connect with me, if you want to let me know that you watched this, definitely you can find me on Instagram. I am at Lindsey, that's Lindsey, the letter A, Walker, that's Walker. Send me a DM, send me a voice note, get in touch with me. I'd love to stay connected.
And I'll also put like handles like the Instagram handles and email down in the description box. So you can have easy access to it. Thank you again, Lindsey. And it
Cool.
was such a pleasure and an honor having you. And I know by God's grace, whoever listens to your story, they will be blessed through it. Okay? We've come to another end of You Have a Story with ToTsFrishion. Thank you again for watching. And if you would like to share your story, you can just send us an email at contact@totsfrishion.com or fill out the form in the description below. We would love to hear from you and tell us how you feel about this episode too. We want to engage with you, okay? Thank you again for watching. Any closing remarks, Lindsey?
Yes, thank you again so much for having me. And if you're watching, if you're listening, thank you for doing so. And I am just so grateful to have spent this time with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure too. I'm grateful for honoring the invite. Thank you. All right. Stay blessed. We'll meet again. Bye.